Welcome to the Culture Docent with Dr. Carr, where real stories spark real change. Together, we'll break down culture, leadership, and inclusion and rebuild them into something transformative. This is where conversations become movements. This is the Culture Docent.
Hey, y'all. It is Dr. Carr, the Culture Docent, here to help you navigate and curate the experiences you want to have. So welcome to our very first episode. I am so excited to have you here. Wanted to give you a little bit of background about me, since this is many of you your first time interacting with me. So when I was first approached about doing a podcast, I had just finished my dissertation on algorithmic bias in hiring practices and how that impacts the career trajectories of Black professionals. And I wasn't really sure, am I a pod bro, right? Like, do I have the content that I want to be able to share on like a weekly, bi-weekly basis? Are, people going to be interested in what I have to say? Like, I love talking about organizations, but will people really want to, hear about that? And the initial idea for the show was actually presented as content centered on my research, like heavy focused on this concept, the Gen AI, and how we're using generative AI. And while we will talk about AI, right? Like, don't get it twisted, we will talk about AI in future episodes. I didn't want every episode to really be like that. I wanted the episodes and all of the, the content that we discuss to really be about things that I have experience in, that I have background in, that I have an expertise in, that I've been practicing for years. Really getting into the talent experience and inclusive leadership, organizational development, organizational behavior, and the culture, right? And so that's how the Culture Docent was born. So why the Culture Docent? Because I want to be your guide. I want to help you navigate, these complex and tricky organizational waters, no matter where you are, right, in your professional journey. And I've worked in public services. I've worked down to the courthouse. I have worked in the federal government as an intelligence analyst, as well as a management and program analyst. I have worked at the largest professional services consulting firm in the world. So one of those big four groups, you can look that up on your own. But I have this expertise to be your guide, but like any good docent, I want to learn from you just as much as you are learning from me. So I want to be able to expose you to conversations that are being had perhaps around you that, you may not be privy to, that you may have not access to, or that you want to jump into, but don't really know where to start or what the basis of the conversation is. That's where I'm going to come in and I'm going to help you and I'm going to guide you, right? That is what the docent is for. And so again, no matter where you are in your professional journey, what industry you're in, this is going to be something for you that you can contribute to and that I will help with. So for the first episode, of course, I wanted to get into something that would really hook y'all, make sure that y'all keep coming back on Tuesdays, but also something that was just really, heavy on my heart, something I've been thinking about. I could not escape this idea of trust and safety in the workplace and how that relates to authenticity. So we're going to really get into that. So you may be hearing more about trust and safety. So especially when it comes to your online experience, those people and systems that are supposed to make sure that you're safe. You'll hear about it, especially if you go onto a website, logging on to Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, right? Clicking on those posts. There's a team that's making sure that, every time you go online, you're not being doxxed or you're not being defrauded. When you go online to buy that shirt, buy that skirt, get that suit, them sneakers, the tennis shoes, right? Like, there is a team that makes sure that when you enter in your credit card information, that somebody on the other side of the world isn't just going and scamming you, right? Like, that's the trust and safety teams. We have those types of teams within our organizations, even if you don't work in kind of that tech space, that online space. The trust and safety teams are often, your HR, your IT, right? But it's not just one part of the organization that's responsible for that type of trust and safety. It's for everyone. And so, as an organizational level, right? Like, We have those safeguards in place, that physical safety, making sure that, guns aren't brought into the workplace, or that when you have access to the resources that you need, you can connect to the internet. There aren't locked doors when you go use the restroom to freshen up, that, there aren't creepy crawlies crawling all on the floor, right? That is a type of physical safety, and that's important. That's, you're trusting that your organization will provide that for you. But there's also this sense of psychological safety that your organization should be providing, and that you should be providing for, others around you, your teammates, your colleagues. And so it's on both sides, not just one or the other. It's going to be both sides that are responsible for maintaining that trust. And that will allow people to, really be their authentic selves. And this topic kind of was on my mind because, how do we ensure that there are these safeguards and protections and this ability for those people that particularly come from marginalized communities? How do they show up? How can they show up as their authentic selves and feel safe, at work to be able to do that? So what are some of those actions that help build trust is what I've really been thinking about. So, when an organization practices what they preach, words are very white, right? So you got to walk it like you talk it. As an organization, if you say that diversity, equity, and inclusion are important to your leadership and the success of the company, right, then you have to have programs that reflect that. You have to have policies that reflect that. You have to show an investment in your people. You have to incorporate employee sentiment into your processes. If you want people to you want your people to trust you as an organization, use employee sentiment to gather data to inform your decisions, not to use it against them. If you're, collecting that employee feedback survey, the survey should be informing, if you're going to have commuter benefits, if you are going to have work from home policies, if you're going to let people use a Mac versus an HP, right? Like, that's what you should be using a lot of this employee sentiment for, not to talk bad about employees or to target them. That is going to erode trust, which we'll get into. But to really build trust, you want to demonstrate that you are using all of this information for the betterment of the organization overall. And the only way to do that is to ensure that all of their practices and policies truly match what you are espousing in your mission statement, in your vision statement, in those objectives. If you say that there is a process for being promoted and that everyone has to follow that process, you ensure that the process is actually being maintained. And so one of the things that we see a lot, is particularly for women, is that their performance is actually rated on a lot of narrative comments as opposed to the actual work that they're doing. So women will receive comments about, not being as friendly or not being a teammate. It's more of this narrative about their kind of interactions as opposed to delivered work on time, completed, the metrics that they were supposed to. And so we have to be very careful about that because, again, that is something that is going to break down trust for your employees or for your colleagues or whomever. And so if we also think about this breakdown of trust, or what is going to build trust for our individual selves, right? Because we play a part too. You are not exempt. You have to help build that trust as well. That means that, you have to show up. And I'm talking to the people that are like, I just come to work to do my work. I'm not trying to make friends. I'm not trying to do this or that. I'm not going to the happy hour. I'm not going to this. I get it. I do. There are very real reasons why people are not going to show up to the happy hour. You could be sober, right? Want people to respect that sobriety journey, and this could be for a religious reason, right? It could be because you have to go pick up your kids from lacrosse practice. It could be you have to meet your papa downtown to pick out curtains and rugs. It could be that, honestly, you're just tired and you don't want to go and you don't have any interest in it. You're an introvert like me. I'm a huge introvert, like textbook definition introvert, actually. And after I've spent all day engaging, my social battery is down, baby. I do not feel like I want to go and engage further. But I also recognize that takes me out of that connection. That is not necessarily my authentic self. People won't be able to see that right? Unless I make that effort to show up in different ways and ways that are authentic to me. So I'm not saying that you got to tell all your business. We don't have to know that you are, you're getting a divorce, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, or that you are, that your political affiliations or things like that. I would actually caution you against some of that, because you do have to protect some of those boundaries for yourself and for your colleagues. But you have to find ways to really connect with people. And again, that doesn't have to be outside of work hours. That could be right there. That could be in the meeting where y'all are just having a quick conversation. I remember having a colleague who shared with us that, she is an extra for TV and film on the weekends. And I thought that was so neat. One, because that's something that I've always wanted to do, but that was just a small part of herself that she shared with us. And it kind of let us know a little bit about her personality outside of work, and also how it informed the work that she does, right? And so it was just something so small, but it gave us some insider and some insight, that insider knowledge about who she is. Had another group of colleagues that they love salad. Like, it was just so funny how much of them just really love salad. But, they would talk about that, and they just started sharing recipes. Right there in the group chats, right? Like, they're sharing recipes on their favorite salad dressings and toppings and places that have great salads, right? So I thought that was cool too, because again, it wasn't necessarily off topic from work. We're trying to find ways to engage with each other, but it let us know just a little bit more about them, and authentically, right? And so those are some ways that you can engage. So, showing up and being committed to sharing something about yourself, to, start a book club, right? Tell people that you're doing a web design class, right? And if you are really interested, you've been working in HR for 15 years, but you really want to get into more of this web design. So you've been taking classes, teaching yourself, watching some videos on YouTube, all of that. And you have another colleague that you learn is they have a catering business, right? But they need someone to do their website. If you are not sharing, if you are not opening yourself up just a little bit, if you're not being authentic in that way and just sharing a little bit about yourself, that could be a missed opportunity. They need someone to do the website. They know that that's something that you want to get more involved in. You want them to think about you for those opportunities. That is what is going to help build trust. That is what is going to help create that psychological safety, being vulnerable, sharing, professional excitements, wins and losses in a way that makes sense for you. So on the converse of all of that, of course, is these actions that break trust, right? That lack of communication, the lack of opportunities, right? Shady business practices, lack of access to resources, no transparency. So going back to our promotion example, once you've been talking to this manager and they're prepping you for a promotion, you're telling you all the experiences that you need to have and what you need to write down and what you need to do and all of that. And then when it comes down to promotion time, you don't get promoted. And they don't provide any actionable feedback. They don't tell you why you didn't get promoted. And you see someone, you're like, look at her over there. She got promoted and not me. And she didn't do half the things that I was doing, right? That erodes trust. Absolutely, bar none. That is going to erode trust. That's going to erode trust in that manager, because it felt, from an employee perspective, they feel like they've been led astray. It's going to erode trust in the organization writ large, because you are absolutely trying to make these connections, but it feels like they're not being transparent. They're not being clear. You don't have the same opportunities as everyone else, and you don't know why. And then that erosion of trust allows people to kind of fill in the blanks with whatever they think makes the most sense. And that's not good. You don't want people filling in blanks on your behalf. So you have to think about what are these actions that really are breaking trust for others, and to avoid those in the interest of transparency and building trust. Because again, I want y'all to trust me and trust, that I'm being vulnerable with you. Something really, fortunately, it was really timely that I was like, I'm gonna talk about this on a pod. I'm definitely gonna be talking about this, but I had, coming again off of dissertation, I was applying to different conferences. I still do apply to conferences, right? Applying to speak at this conference, but this was one that was by a very well-known organization that I have been following and tracking, and they have multiple conferences a year, and they're just really trustworthy and known in the space. And I was like, yep, I'm applying to that. I'm going to that conference, right? I'm very excited about it. Tailored my proposal to completely match this conference theme, submitted it, and kind of moved on. I knew that I wouldn't hear about my selection for a couple months, so just let that just be, by itself, right? And so I received this notice, that I was not selected. And it is what it is, right? Like, there will be other opportunities. I knew that I may not be selected. And I wasn't really that concerned about not being selected. What I was concerned about was why I was not selected, right? Like, the reasons that they kind of listed. And it was because sometime in between the time that I submitted my proposal, they had changed the theme of the conference. And so when they were the committee is reviewing proposals, they only selected those proposals that actually matched the new conference theme. And I just thought that was very shady. I ain't gonna hold you. I thought that was shady. Like, how could you just do that to me, right? Like, life isn't fair, and I get it. And there will be other, opportunities, but it was the fact that kind of broke down trust for me. There were other ways that they probably could have handled that, perhaps, creating another proposal process that was maybe truncated to allow people to submit proposals for this new conference theme. Or, for instance, they could have allowed everyone that had submitted an opportunity to revise, maybe give us a week to revise our conference proposals to better match the new theme. But none of those options were offered. And that really kind of broke down trust for me. And so it really had me question, well, do I want to apply again to this in the future? Is this something, are they going to constantly change themes? All of those things are kind of going through my head. But I used as an example of, some ways that can break down trust. But there are also ways that we can help rebuild that. And that is what I want, for us to hopefully avoid breaking down trust and not allowing people to show up authentically, right? And kind of chipping away at that psychological safety, because it takes so much more time to rebuild trust and to repair that than it is to just be transparent in the first place. So, all right, y'all, that was, our conversation for today. And we've reached kind of this last segment of every episode, which will be carte blanche. That is CARRTE, because I love a play on my last name. So this is the segment where I'm going to answer any questions that you send in. You'll have a link that you'll be able to send me questions, because I definitely want y'all to engage with me. But anything from my future speakers, any upcoming events, whatever we got going on is truly going to match the name. It's going to be a carte blanche. It's whatever goes right here. So this episode's carte blanche, because it is our first one, is going to be focused on some reflections. So whether you write these down in a journal or just mentally answer them, I want you to think about the following questions. So, what does authenticity look like to me? What feelings emerge when I show up as my authentic self? What have I done to create an environment where my teams or team members feels like they can show up as themselves? And how can I personally add to my reservoir of trust? And with that, I thank you for listening, and I hope to see all of y'all back for episode 2. We are going to have Erica Shoemate with us, where we're going to be talking about AI, but not just, the random conversations everyone's talking about AI, but really AI and the art of the career pivot. So I'm very excited about that conversation. So come back next Tuesday for more empowering conversations that lead to empowered experiences. Bye, y'all.
That's it for today's episode of The Culture Docent with Dr. Takeisha Carr. We'll be back next Tuesday. Don't miss it. Questions or comments? Email tcd@kmob1003.com. And don't forget, check out our curated store at kmob1003.com.